Rich man mocked poor driver. If you can drive this, I'll give you a car. Tyrone Johnson felt his heart race when he heard the cruel laughter coming from the dealership lot. His 17-year-old daughter, Aaliyah, had come to pick him up after another exhausting day driving for rideshare apps. But now she witnessed a situation that would make any father ashamed. If you can drive this machine to the end of the street without shaking like a leaf, I'll give you a brand new car, shouted Bradley Thompson, pointing at the gleaming yellow Lamborghini as a crowd gathered to watch the spectacle. The 42-year-old businessman, owner of 3 dealerships in Chicago, laughed as if he'd told the joke of the century. Tyrone, a 45-year-old black man with dreads tied back in a ponytail and simple clothes, maintained his dignity even in the face of public humiliation. "Daddy, you don't have to listen to this man," Aaliyah whispered, gripping her father's arm tightly. But Tyrone couldn't take his eyes off the sports car, not out of envy or desire, but because that specific model brought back memories he'd buried long ago. His hands began to tremble slightly, not from fear of the challenge, but from the painful memories rushing back like a slap to the face. "Look at this! The guy's already shaking just looking at it." Bradley continued his show for the dealership employees and customers. "Bet he doesn't even know where the ignition is." The crowd grew. Dealership staff, curious customers, and even some passers-by stopped to watch. Aaliyah noticed people pulling out their phones to record and felt a mix of anger and shame for her father. "I accept," Tyrone said, his calm voice cutting through the laughter like a blade. Silence fell over the group. Bradley stopped laughing, not expecting the humble driver to actually take the challenge. "What was that?" "I said, I accept your challenge," Tyrone repeated, looking the businessman straight in the eye. "But on one condition." "What condition?" Bradley asked, suspicious. "If I drive it without a problem, besides the car, you give me 5 minutes of your time. Just 5 minutes of your life." Bradley let out a forced laugh, trying to regain control. 5 minutes? Man, if you can pull this off without making a fool of yourself, I'll listen to you as long as you want. But when you fail, don't come crying to me for forgiveness." Aaliyah clenched her fist. She'd known her father for 17 years and had never seen him rise to a taunt like this. Tyrone had always taught her that real strength was knowing when to fight and when to walk away. Why was this time different? Tyrone approached the yellow Lamborghini, his breathing growing heavier. The car was identical to one he'd driven years ago in a completely different life. He ran his hand over the smooth body, and Bradley noticed something odd in the way the driver touched the vehicle. "Have you ever even seen a car like this up close before?" Bradley taunted, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Yes," Tyrone replied simply, opening the driver's door with ease. The way he opened the door, his care for the interior, his posture as he sat down, Bradley felt a chill run down his spine. This didn't seem like the man's first time in a luxury car. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now back to the story. Tyrone adjusted the seat and mirrors with technical precision. His hands stopped shaking the moment they touched the wheel, as if he'd found a long-lost home. Bradley watched every move, a shiver running down his spine as he saw how familiar the driver was with every detail of the dashboard. "Daddy," Aaliyah whispered, moving closer to the window. "Are you sure?" Tyrone looked at his daughter and smiled, a sad but determined smile. "Sweetheart, there are things about your father's past you don't know. Today might be the day to discover some of them." Before starting the engine, Tyrone turned to Bradley, who stood by the passenger door. "Mr. Bradley Thompson, isn't that right?" he asked calmly. The businessman was surprised. He hadn't introduced himself, and people in Tyrone's social circle rarely knew him by his full name. "How do you know my name?" "I know a lot about you," Tyrone replied, starting the engine. The powerful roar of the V10 echoed through the dealership lot. "For example, I know you were married to Samantha Thompson for 15 years until your divorce in 2019. Bradley's face went completely pale. Few people knew intimate details about his failed marriage, and he certainly didn't expect to hear his ex-wife's name from a rideshare driver. How do you know Samantha?" But Tyrone had already pulled out of the parking spot. driving with a smoothness and precision that left everyone stunned. It wasn't just driving. It was complete mastery, as if man and machine were one. The crowd followed the Lamborghini as it glided down the street in front of the dealership. Tyrone took a perfect turn, accelerated smoothly, and demonstrated absolute control over the 600 horsepower. There was no hesitation, nervousness, or inexperience. It was pure class. Aaliyah filmed everything with her phone, but no longer to document her father's humiliation. Now she filmed because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Who was this man who had raised her for 17 years? Where did these skills come from? Bradley ran after the car, along with the crowd, realizing he'd made a terrible mistake. The way Tyrone handled the vehicle wasn't luck or natural talent. It was refined technique, deep knowledge, and real experience. When Tyrone completed the agreed route and returned to the dealership, the silence was absolute. He parked the car with a flawless maneuver and stepped out, handing the keys to Bradley as if it were nothing. "There, now it's your 5 minutes," he said, but Bradley seemed in shock. Who are you?" the businessman stammered. "My name is Tyrone Johnson. 10 years ago I taught your ex-wife Samantha how to drive sports cars," Tyrone said calmly, watching Bradley process the information. "She wanted to learn in secret because you always said women couldn't handle a man's car." The revelation hit like a bomb. Bradley remembered the arguments with Samantha about her love for cars, how he'd belittled and controlled her desires. He also remembered when she started going out alone on Saturday afternoons, claiming she was shopping or visiting friends. Samantha, she was... Bradley tried to form a sentence. "Learning to drive at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway," Tyrone finished. "I was a professional instructor back then. Your ex-wife became one of the best students I ever had." Aaliyah listened wide-eyed. Her father had been a professional instructor. Why had he never told her? "But I don't understand," Bradley mumbled. "If you were a professional instructor, why are you driving for a rideshare app?" Tyrone's expression darkened. He looked at Aaliyah, then at the crowd still surrounding them, and sighed deeply. "Because 10 years ago, I destroyed my own life to save someone else's." The tension in the air was palpable. Bradley felt he was about to learn something that would completely change his perception of the man he'd humiliated just minutes before. "On Samantha's last day of lessons, there was an accident at the track," Tyrone continued, his voice heavy with restrained emotion. "One of the other instructors lost control of the car during a demonstration. The vehicle flipped and caught fire." Aaliyah held her breath. She had never heard this story. "I abandoned my car and ran to save my colleague. I managed to pull him out of the burning car, but the burns on my hands and arms were severe. I couldn't drive for months." Tyrone showed his hands, and for the first time, Bradley noticed the faint scars marking his fingers and wrists. "When I finally recovered physically, I found out I had lost my job. The company considered me responsible for the accident due to negligence. My reputation as an instructor was ruined." Bradley felt a lump in his throat. The story didn't seem made up. There was genuine pain in Tyrone's voice. "But that's unfair," Bradley murmured. "You saved that man's life." "Justice isn't always about what's right," Tyrone replied. "It's about who has the power to decide the truth." Aaliyah stepped closer to her father, gently touching his arm. "Dad, why did you never tell me this?" "Because I didn't want you growing up angry or bitter, sweetheart. I wanted you to learn that sometimes we do what's right, even when we know we'll pay a high price for it." The crowd began to disperse, but Bradley remained still, processing everything he had just heard. His ex-wife Samantha had mentioned a few times an instructor who had inspired her not just to drive, but to find the courage to change her life. Could it be the same man? "Samantha always talked about an instructor who changed her life," Bradley said slowly. "She said he taught her she was capable of so much more than I ever let her believe." Tyrone nodded silently. "Your ex-wife is an extraordinary woman. She deserved to find someone who recognized that." The words hit Bradley like a punch. Samantha had remarried 2 years after their divorce, to a man who supported all her dreams and ambitions. Meanwhile, Bradley remained alone, bitter, and treating people around him the same way he had treated Tyrone that day. I need to apologize to you," Bradley said, his voice almost a whisper. You don't have to, Tyrone replied, but you do need to understand one thing. How we treat people says far more about us than it does about them. Bradley glanced at the yellow Lamborghini, then back at Tyrone and made a decision that surprised even himself. The car is yours, he said, finally holding out the keys. No, Tyrone refused. I don't want anything given out of pity or guilt. It's not pity, it's recognition, Bradley insisted. You didn't just drive the car. You taught me a lesson I needed to learn a long time ago. But Tyrone shook his head again. If you really want to do something for me, there's a better way. What? Come with me to see where I really work. Not just driving for the app, but what I do in my free time. Bradley looked around, realizing a few people were still watching and listening. Dealership employees, curious customers, and passers-by who had stopped to see how things unfolded. Right now? Bradley asked. Right now, Tyrone confirmed. Aaliyah smiled for the first time since the situation began. She knew about her father's project and could tell Bradley was in for a big surprise. Can I come too? A woman's voice interrupted. Everyone turned to see a silver-haired woman, elegantly dressed, approaching the group. Bradley paled when he recognized her. Mom? What are you doing here? Barbara Thompson, 68 years old, looked at her son seriously before addressing Tyrone. I recognized you the moment I saw you, she said, her voice trembling. You're the man who saved my life 5 years ago. Now it was Tyrone's turn to be surprised. He studied the woman's face carefully, and gradually the memory returned. You're the lady who fainted at the pharmacy on Michigan Avenue? Exactly, Mrs. Barbara smiled, tears welling in her eyes. You carried me to the hospital when no one else knew what to do. The doctors said if I'd arrived 5 minutes later. Bradley felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. His mother had suffered a heart attack 5 years ago, and he'd always known a stranger had helped her, but he'd never discovered who it was. Mom, this is the man who saved my life, yes, Mrs. Barbara confirmed, stepping closer to Tyrone. And from what I overheard in your conversation, he also taught Samantha how to drive. She fixed her son with a stern look. Bradley, I raised you better than this. How could you humiliate the man who saved your own mother? The businessman felt a shame he hadn't known since childhood. In front of everyone, his mother was publicly scolding him, and he knew he deserved every word. I didn't know, Mom. I had no idea it was him. And does that justify treating anyone with disrespect? Mrs. Barbara asked, her tone unyielding. No matter who they are, no one deserves to be humiliated for entertainment. Aaliyah watched the scene with growing admiration for her father. With each revelation, she uncovered layers of a man who had raised her alone, working tirelessly, yet never mentioning the times he'd been a hero in others' lives. Mrs. Barbara, Tyrone interjected respectfully, there's no need to scold your son. Today he'll discover some things that might make him rethink certain attitudes. And what will you show him? The woman asked, curious. The place where I teach young people like Aaliyah to drive responsibly and safely, for free. Bradley held his breath for a moment. A community project? Tyrone gave free driving lessons. For 8 years after losing my job as a professional instructor, I've been teaching low-income youth in my neighborhood, Tyrone explained. I use my own car, it's not much, but it works for teaching the basics. Daddy doesn't just teach driving, but responsibility on the road, Aaliyah added proudly. He talks about respecting pedestrians, cyclists, other drivers, about how traffic is a shared space. How many young people have you taught? Mrs. Barbara asked, genuinely interested. 143, Tyrone replied without hesitation. Aaliyah helps me keep track. Some have gotten jobs as drivers, others learned for personal safety. Bradley fell silent, processing the information. The man he'd thoughtlessly humiliated spent his free time teaching underprivileged youth, asking nothing in return. And where do you hold these lessons? Bradley asked. In the parking lot of an abandoned supermarket on the south side, Aaliyah answered. The owner lets us use it on weekends. An abandoned parking lot? Mrs. Barbara asked, concerned. Is that safe? It's what we have, ma'am, Tyrone replied simply. It's not ideal, but It's enough to teach the basics. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. Bradley glanced at the yellow Lamborghini, then at Tyrone, and an idea began forming in his mind. If you had access to a better location with proper training cars, how many more young people could you reach? I don't know. Maybe double? Triple? Tyrone answered, unsure where Bradley was going. But that's just a dream. We don't have the resources for something like that. What if I said maybe you do? Tyrone looked at Bradley skeptically. I didn't want to accept charity or favors out of guilt from the businessman. I'm not asking for a favor, Tyrone said firmly. My project works because it's built with love and dedication, not because there's money involved. And who said it would be a favor? Bradley asked, a smile beginning to form on his face. I'm talking about a partnership. Partnership? You have the knowledge, the experience, and the dedication. I have resources, connections, and structure. Together, we could create something much bigger than either of us could alone. Aaliyah looked at her father, waiting for his reaction. Tyrone remained silent for a long moment, considering the offer. And what would my role be in this partnership? He asked cautiously. Technical and educational director. You define the entire teaching methodology, select the instructors, oversee the training. It would be your project, but with the resources to truly grow. And what would your role be? Tyrone continued questioning. Handling the administrative, financial, and bureaucratic side, providing the location, the cars, the insurance, everything you need to focus on what you do best, teaching. Barbara watched the conversation with growing interest. She'd known her son for 42 years and could tell when he was being sincere. And at that moment, Bradley seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of doing something meaningful. But why would you do this? Tyrone asked. An hour ago, you were humiliating me in public. Bradley took a deep breath before answering. Because an hour ago I was a fool who judged people by their appearance and social status. Now I've discovered that the man who saved my mother, taught my ex-wife to be brave, and dedicates his life to helping underprivileged youth was standing right in front of me, and I treated him like trash. The brutal honesty of his answer surprised everyone. Bradley continued, I can't change what I did, but I can try to do better from now on. And today I learned that true success isn't about having expensive cars or humiliating people. It's about making a difference in others' lives. Tyrone looked at Aaliyah, who nodded encouragingly. Then he glanced at Barbara, who smiled approvingly at the proposal. There's one condition, Tyrone finally said. What? The project can't carry your name. I don't want it to become personal marketing or a way to improve your image. It has to be about the youth, not about us. I completely agree, Bradley replied without hesitation. And I want to understand your plans better before deciding anything. I won't commit to something I don't fully grasp. Fair enough. How about we start by visiting your current project? I want to see how you work, meet some of the young people you teach. Tyrone hesitated for a moment, then nodded. All right, but I warn you, we don't have anything fancy. It's all very simple. Even better, Bradley smiled. I need to learn to appreciate simple, genuine things. Barbara stepped closer to Tyrone and warmly took his hands. Thank you for saving my life years ago, and thank you for saving my family today. What do you mean, saving your family? My son was becoming a bitter, arrogant person. Today you reminded him of the values I tried to teach him. That's worth more than any car or money. Bradley felt his mother's words like a wake-up call. She was right. In recent years after the divorce, he'd grown increasingly cynical and disrespectful toward people he considered beneath him. Mom, I'm sorry for becoming that kind of person. Don't apologize to me, Bradley. Apologize to everyone you've mistreated, and most importantly, change your ways from now on. Aaliyah watched the family dynamic with interest. For the first time, she saw a wealthy family confronting real issues of relationships and personal growth, not just material matters. So, shall we go see Daddy's project? She asked, excited at the possibility of showing her father's work to people who could truly help. Let's go, Bradley agreed. But first, Tyrone, there's something I need to know. What? Why did you really accept my challenge? It wasn't just because of the taunt, was it? Tyrone glanced at the yellow Lamborghini, then back at Bradley. Because I recognized the car. It's the same model Samantha was driving on the day of the accident that changed my life. When I saw her driving that car for the last time, she told me something I've never forgotten. What did she say? That one day you'd realize you'd lost the most precious person in your life because you didn't know how to recognize people's worth. And that maybe someday, someone would teach you that lesson the hard way. The silence that followed was heavy. Bradley realized Samantha had predicted exactly what happened that day. She was always smarter than me, Bradley admitted, and she was right about everything. Samantha is a special person. That's why she deserved to be treated as such. And that's why she deserved someone better than me. Tyrone didn't respond, but his expression made it clear he agreed with the statement. Well, Barbara interrupted the tense moment. How about we go see this project? I'm curious to see the work of this extraordinary man. The group headed to the cars. Bradley offered everyone a ride in his car, but Tyrone preferred to go with Aaliyah in his own vehicle, a well-kept but clearly used 2008 Civic. Dad, Aaliyah said as they drove, are you sure about this partnership? I'm not sure about anything, sweetheart, but I've learned that sometimes we need to take a chance on people, even if they disappoint us at first. What if he's only doing this out of guilt? Then we'll find out soon enough and end the partnership. But if he's sincere, we can help far more young people than we ever could alone. Do you trust him? Tyrone thought for a moment before answering. I trust his mother. Barbara raised a son who, despite his flaws, has the potential to change, and I trust what I saw in his eyes when he realized who I was. There was real shame there, not just social embarrassment. And if it doesn't work out, then we go back to our project as it always was. Nothing changes for the worse, Aaliyah. It can only get better or stay the same. Aaliyah smiled, admiring her father's simple yet profound wisdom. The drive to the south side took about 40 minutes. Along the way, Bradley watched through the window at neighborhoods he'd never visited, streets he'd never traveled, a social reality he'd only known through news reports. Mom, I had no idea Chicago had so many places like this, Bradley remarked. Of course you didn't, son. You've always lived in a bubble of privilege. Today, you're seeing the real United States. When they arrived at the parking lot of the abandoned supermarket, Bradley was shocked by the poor conditions. The pavement was full of potholes, there was no proper lighting, and the safety measures were questionable. This is where you hold the classes? He asked, concerned. It's what we have, Tyrone replied without embarrassment. It's not perfect, but it works. Even though it was Saturday morning, 5 young people were waiting for Tyrone. When they saw the instructor's Civic pull up, they waved excitedly. Mr. Johnson, shouted a girl around 16. Brought visitors today. I did, Destiny. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Mr. Thompson and Mrs. Barbara. The young people greeted the visitors politely, but were clearly curious about the presence of such well-dressed people at their lesson site. They came to see our project, Tyrone explained. Destiny, why don't you tell them about your classes? The girl immediately perked up. I started learning with Mr. Tyrone 6 months ago. Before that, I was really afraid of driving, but he was super patient. Now I know how to park, parallel park, everything. And what's your goal? Mrs. Barbara asked kindly. I want to work as a rideshare driver to help my mom. She works 2 jobs, and I want to contribute too. Bradley felt a tightness in his chest. The girl was the same age as some of his nephews, who only cared about video games and designer clothes. Mr. Tyrone doesn't just teach driving, added a young man around 18. He talks about respecting pedestrians, yielding, having patience on the road. He says a car is a responsibility, not a toy. What's your name? Bradley asked. Deshawn. I started learning a year ago. Now I work delivering on a bike, but I want to move up to a car. And do you feel the lessons helped you? A lot. Mr. Tyrone says that on the road, we represent our family, our neighborhood, that we have to set a good example. It's even helped me in my personal life, you know? Aaliyah smiled, listening to the young people speak about her father with such affection and respect. It was clear Tyrone had become a father figure to many of them. "Mr. Tyrone?" A shyer girl stepped forward. "Can I have my lesson today?" "Of course, Kylie. Everyone, let's get started. Our guests will just observe, okay?" For the next 2 hours, Bradley and Mrs. Barbara watched Tyrone work with the young people. It wasn't just driving instruction, it was a complete education on responsibility, respect, and citizenship. Tyrone patiently explained every procedure, repeated it as many times as needed, and treated each student with dignity and encouragement. When someone made a mistake, he corrected them constructively, always focusing on learning. "Kylie, remember what we talked about checking the rearview mirror?" Tyrone said calmly when the girl forgot to check the mirrors. "It's not just a traffic rule, it's about caring for our lives and others." "Sorry, Mr. Tyrone. No need to apologize. Mistakes are part of learning. Just try to remember next time, okay?" Bradley was fascinated by Tyrone's endless patience. He remembered how he'd learned to drive with an impatient instructor who yelled at every mistake, making the process stressful and traumatic. "Deshawn, want to show our guests how you parallel park?" Tyrone suggested. The young man got nervous with the visitors watching, but Tyrone reassured him. "Relax, it's just a demo. Do it your way, at your pace." Deshawn executed the maneuver almost perfectly, missing by just a few inches on the first try. "Great job," Tyrone congratulated him. "Want to try once more to get the distance right?" On the second try, the parking was perfect. Deshawn got out of the car, beaming. "Mr. Tyrone, I did it. Always knew you could. It was just a matter of practice and confidence." Mrs. Barbara watched everything with tears in her eyes. There was something deeply moving about seeing a man dedicate his time and energy to empowering young people who otherwise might never have had the chance to learn to drive properly. "Tyrone," she approached him during a break, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Mom. What motivates you to do this? You work all week driving for rideshare. You must be tired. Why spend your free time like this?" Tyrone smiled, looking at the young people practicing in the parking lot. "Because when I was young, someone gave me a chance. A veteran instructor taught me not just how to drive, but to love the profession. He said knowledge only has value when it's shared." "And you never thought about charging for the lessons?" "I did. But then I remembered these young people probably couldn't afford it, and I realized the value of what I do here isn't measured in money." Bradley approached the conversation. "And what is that worth?" he asked. Seeing Destiny land her first job, watching Deshawn gain the confidence to face life, seeing Kylie overcome her shyness. Every small victory of theirs is worth more than any paycheck. "But you have expenses," Bradley insisted. "Gas, car maintenance, your time." "I do, and sometimes it's tough. But Aaliyah helps me. Some former students chip in when they can, and we always make it work." Bradley fell silent, reflecting on the genuine generosity he was witnessing. How many times had he complained about much smaller expenses when he had abundant resources? "Mr. Tyrone," Destiny said, stepping closer. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course, Destiny." The girl led Tyrone slightly away from the group, but Bradley could still overhear their conversation. "Mr. Johnson, my mom said I might have to stop the lessons." "Why?" "She lost one of her jobs. It's hard to even afford the bus fare to come here." Tyrone's face darkened with concern for his student. "Destiny, don't worry about the fare. If you need, I'll pick you up from home for your lessons." "But Mr. Johnson, that'll be so much trouble." "Not at all. You're almost ready to take your DMV test. We're not giving up now." Bradley listened to the whole exchange, feeling a pang of emotion. Tyrone was willing to drive to her house, using his own gas and time just so she wouldn't miss the chance to learn. When the lessons ended and the students left, Bradley approached Tyrone with a concrete proposal. "I want to make this work for real," he said firmly. "How so?" "I want to rent or buy a proper space for you with structure, safety, restrooms, a covered area for theory lessons." "Bradley, that would cost a fortune. Not for me, and it'd be an investment, not an expense. A training center for responsible drivers could be a sustainable business." Tyrone glanced at Aaliyah, who seemed excited by the possibility. "And what would the business model be?" "Simple. We offer free lessons for low-income youth like you're already doing, and we also offer paid lessons for middle-class folks who want more humane, responsible instruction. The idea made sense. Tyrone knew many people had the means to pay for lessons, but couldn't find instructors truly committed to quality teaching. Would the revenue from paid lessons cover the free ones? Tyrone asked. Exactly, and I'd cover any initial deficit until the project becomes self-sustaining. Barbara watched the negotiation with growing approval. She could see her son was genuinely excited about creating something meaningful. There's one more thing, Bradley continued. I want you to hire some of your former students as assistant instructors. Create job opportunities for the people you've trained. Aaliyah couldn't contain her excitement. Dad, that would be amazing. Imagine how many kids like Destiny and Deshawn we could help. Easy, Aaliyah, Tyrone urged caution. This is a huge project. I need to think it through. What worries you? Bradley asked. Responsibility. If we give hope to hundreds of kids and then the project fails, we'll do more harm than good. What would make you feel secure enough to agree? Tyrone thought for a moment. I want to see a detailed plan. Budgets, projections, clear contracts outlining everyone's responsibilities. And I want to start small, testing the model before expanding. Perfect, Bradley agreed. How about we start with a smaller space, for about 50 students, and expand if it works? And where would this space be? I already have a few options in mind. I can show you next week. Tyrone took a deep breath, sensing he was about to make a decision that would change his life and the lives of many young people. All right, let's give it a try. Aaliyah let out a joyful scream and hugged her father. Barbara smiled, proud of her son for making such a noble decision. But there's one final condition, Tyrone added. What is it? I want you to spend a month working with me as a rideshare driver. Bradley was surprised. What do you mean? I want you to truly understand the reality of those who will benefit from our project. A month driving on the streets, dealing with traffic, meeting people from different social backgrounds. You want me to leave my company for a month? You don't have to quit, but you need to dedicate a few hours each day to understand what a professional driver's life is like. Bradley hesitated. The idea was intimidating yet challenging. And what would that prove? That you truly grasp what we're doing. That this isn't just some charity project to ease your conscience. The challenge was direct but fair. Bradley realized Tyrone was testing his real commitment. I accept, he said, surprising everyone. When do we start? Monday, 7 in the morning. Where do we meet? At Union Station. It's one of the busiest spots for rideshare drivers. Barbara looked at her son with a mix of pride and concern. Bradley, are you sure about this? I am, Mom. I need to truly understand the world I'm investing in. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Aaliyah watched the transformation unfold before her eyes. In just a few hours, her father had gone from being publicly humiliated to a potential partner of a successful businessman. More importantly, she had seen the recognition of the value and dignity of the work he did. Daddy, I'm so proud of you, she said, hugging Tyrone. We haven't done anything yet, sweetheart. This is just the beginning. But you had the courage to accept the challenge, showed your skills, and most of all, kept your dignity the whole time. Dignity is something we never lose, Aaliyah. Others may try to take it, but we only lose it if we let them. Bradley heard those words and felt he had learned more that day than in years of college and business experience. Tyrone, can I ask you something? Of course. How do you manage not to hold a grudge? I humiliated you publicly just hours ago, and now you're giving me a chance to do something good. Tyrone smiled sadly. Because I've learned that holding on to bitterness only hurts the one who holds it, and because I believe people can change when given the right opportunity. What if I disappoint you? Then you'll have to live with that disappointment. I've done my part. I gave you the opportunity. The simple yet profound answer hit Bradley like a punch. He realized Tyrone had subtly placed the entire responsibility for the partnership's success or failure in his hands. Well, Barbara interrupted the moment, How about we celebrate this new beginning with lunch? That's not necessary, Barbara. Tyrone politely declined. Of course it is. You've just formed a partnership that could change hundreds of young lives. That deserves celebration. And I know the perfect place, Bradley added. A simple but excellent restaurant in Chinatown. Home-style food, family atmosphere. Tyrone hesitated, but Aaliyah encouraged him. Go on, Dad. After everything that happened today, I think we deserve a special lunch. Over lunch, the conversation flowed naturally. Bradley asked many questions about Tyrone's teaching methods, the challenges faced by the young people in the project, and the real needs of a community driving school. One thing that always bothered me about traditional driving schools, Tyrone explained, is that they only teach you how to pass the DMV test, not how to be a good driver. What's the difference? Barbara asked. Passing the test is about memorizing rules and performing basic maneuvers. Being a good driver means understanding you share public space with others, that your decisions affect everyone's safety. And how do you teach that? By talking a lot with the students, explaining the why behind each rule, not just what to do. Talking about empathy, patience, responsibility. Bradley was impressed by Tyrone's teaching depth. It was clear he had developed his own method, based on experience and genuine concern for shaping responsible drivers. Tyrone, have you ever thought of formalizing this method? Bradley asked. Turning it into a manual or course for other instructors? Never crossed my mind. Why? Because if it works this well, other instructors could learn and apply it in their own workplaces. The idea excited Aaliyah immediately. Dad, that would be amazing. Imagine if instructors across the United States used your method. Hold on, everyone, Tyrone laughed. Let's get our project working here in Chicago first, then we can think about expanding. But it's important to document everything from the start, Bradley insisted. Once the project is running well, we'll have material to show results and replicate the model. Barbara watched everyone's growing enthusiasm and felt happy seeing her son finally involved in something that truly mattered. Bradley, she said, it's been years since I've seen you this excited about a project. It's true, Mum. I feel like I'm finally doing something that really counts. And what changed? Bradley glanced at Tyrone before answering. I met someone who showed me what real success is. It's not having expensive cars or fat bank accounts. It's making a positive difference in people's lives. And you think you can make that difference? I don't know, but I really want to try. After lunch, the group said goodbye with concrete plans for the following week. Bradley would spend Monday working with Tyrone as a rideshare driver, and on Tuesday, they'd visit potential locations for the future community driving school. Tyrone, Bradley said as they parted, thank you for giving me a second chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, Bradley. Just don't waste yours. I won't waste it. I promise. Aaliyah and Tyrone rode home in silence for the first few minutes, both processing everything that had happened on this extraordinary day. Dad, do you think this will work? Aaliyah finally asked. I don't know, sweetheart, but I know it's worth trying. What if Bradley gives up when he realizes how hard it is to be a rideshare driver? Then we'll know he wasn't ready to be our partner. Better to find out now than after we've started the project. That was really smart of you to make that a condition. It wasn't smart, Aaliyah. It was necessity. If we're going to work together, I need to be sure he understands and respects our world. And if he passes the test, then we'll have a real partner, not just an investor. That night, Bradley called Samantha, his ex-wife. It had been months since they'd spoken directly. Hi, Samantha, it's me, Bradley. Bradley, did something happen? Actually, yes, but nothing bad. I met someone today who changed my perspective on a lot of things. Oh yeah? Who? Tyrone Johnson, the instructor who taught you to drive. Samantha went silent for a moment, surprised. You met Tyrone? How? Bradley told her the whole story, from the initial humiliation to the partnership they were now planning. Samantha listened without interrupting. Bradley, I'm impressed, she said at the end. I never imagined you'd do something like this. Neither did I. But meeting Tyrone made me realize many things about myself. What kind of things? That I've become an arrogant and disrespectful person, that I judge people by their appearance without really knowing them, that I've wasted my life on things that don't matter. And now I want to try to be a better person. To do something truly worthwhile. Samantha smiled on the other end of the line. She was hearing genuine humility in her ex-husband's voice, something she hadn't heard in years. I'm happy for you, Bradley. Tyrone is a special person. If you two can work together, it could turn out really well. Samantha, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you forgive me for being such a controlling and disrespectful husband? The question caught Samantha off guard. Bradley had never truly apologized for his behavior during their marriage. Bradley, that was so long ago. But it mattered. I treated you poorly, didn't recognize your worth, didn't support your dreams. I'm sorry for that. Thank you for apologizing. It means a lot to me. And thank you for indirectly helping me today. If you hadn't mentioned Tyrone so many times during our marriage, I might not have made the connection. I talked about him? Often. You said he taught you that you were capable of so much more than I let you believe. Samantha chuckled softly. He really did teach me that. And apparently, he taught you the same lesson today. It's true, and now I need to prove I've learned it. After hanging up, Bradley sat for a long time thinking about their conversation. For the first time in years, he felt at peace with his past and hopeful about the future. On Monday morning at 7, Bradley arrived at Union Station. He found Tyrone waiting beside his Civic with a second rideshare driver's placard. Good morning, partner, Bradley greeted, trying to stay cheerful despite his nerves. Good morning. Ready for your first real day of work? I hope so. How does this work? Simple. You'll drive my car for half the day while I guide you from the passenger seat. Then we'll switch. And the goal? For you to understand the daily struggles of a professional driver. The traffic, difficult passengers, the pressure for good ratings, the operating costs. Bradley took a deep breath and got in the car. It was the first time in years he'd driven an economy car, nothing like the luxury vehicles he was used to. First thing, Tyrone instructed, forget about status or comfort. Here you're a service provider, and the customer is always right. Even when they're not. Especially when they're not. Your rating and your income depend on their satisfaction. The first ride was to Midway Airport. The passenger, a hurried executive, complained about the traffic, the delay, the AC, and still asked for a discount at the end. I'm sorry, sir, but the fare is set by the app, Bradley explained politely, following Tyrone's guidance. You drivers are all the same, always making excuses not to give discounts. Bradley felt his anger rising, but Tyrone discreetly touched his arm, reminding him to stay calm. Thank you for choosing our service, sir. Have a good day, Bradley forced a smile. Once the passenger left, Bradley vented, how do you put up with this kind of treatment every day? Because we have to, and because we know not all passengers are like that. But when they are, it's part of the job. Don't you get angry? Of course I do, but anger doesn't pay the bills or improve the situation. Patience and professionalism do. Throughout the day, Bradley encountered all kinds of passengers, some polite and friendly, others rude and demanding. He learned about fuel costs, vehicle wear and tear, cleaning and maintenance. Tyrone, how much do you take home in a day on average? It depends on the day and the business. Between $80 and $120 working 10 hours. 10 hours. Sometimes more, depends on the need. Bradley did the math in his head. It was less than he spent on lunch at some restaurants. And on weekends, when you teach classes. Weekends are for the project. I make less money, but I gain personal satisfaction. How do you manage to balance everything? Organization and priorities, and Aaliyah's help. She takes care of a lot for me. During lunch, Bradley insisted on paying, but Tyrone refused. Today, you're a rideshare driver. You eat where I eat, spend what I spend. They ate at a casual diner with good but simple food at an affordable price. Bradley noticed the other drivers around them, chatting about fares, complaining about difficult passengers, sharing tips on the best spots in the city. Tyrone, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever feel like you're wasting your potential? With all your experience and knowledge, you could be earning more in another profession, Tyrone thought before answering. Sometimes I think about that, but then I remember that every young person I teach could become a better professional than me. That my current job lets me fund my real work, educating. What do you consider your real work? Teaching. It's always been teaching. Driving for rideshare is just the way I support my true calling. The answer made Bradley reflect on his own priorities. For years, he'd worked only to accumulate more money without thinking about purpose or vocation. The afternoon was more challenging. Heavy traffic, rain, impatient passengers. Bradley started feeling the tension and stress that were part of Tyrone's daily routine. "Is it like this every day?" he asked after a particularly rough ride. "Every weekday, and weekends too when I need to." "How do you keep your sanity?" "By remembering why I work. Every dollar I earn here can turn into a free class for a young person. That gives meaning to the sacrifice." By the end of the day, Bradley was exhausted. He'd only driven half a shift, but it felt like he'd run a marathon. "Thank you for today, Tyrone. It was eye-opening. And tomorrow there's more. A whole week for you to fully understand our reality." A whole week. That's what we agreed. A month working as a rideshare driver. Bradley swallowed hard. He'd forgotten about the full commitment. "All right, see you tomorrow." That night, Bradley called his mother. "Mom, I think I made a mistake taking on this challenge." "Why?" "It's much harder than I imagined, physically, emotionally, financially." "And what's that teaching you?" "That I've lived in a bubble of privilege my whole life, that I never truly understood the struggles of ordinary people." "And now that you do, are you going to quit?" Bradley thought about his mother's question. Quitting would be easy, but it would also mean admitting he didn't have the grit to honor his commitments. "No, I'll see it through. I need to fully understand before I become Tyrone's partner." "I'm proud of you, son." The week brought growing challenges. Bradley experienced the frustration of sitting in traffic for hours, losing money while burning gas. He dealt with drunk, rude passengers who tried to haggle over fares or change destinations mid-ride. He also met wonderful passengers, an elderly woman who shared fascinating life stories, a young student who worked days and studied nights, a single mother juggling everything to support her kids. "Tyrone, how do you stay empathetic with difficult passengers?" "By remembering everyone is fighting battles we don't see. That rude executive might have just lost a big deal. That impatient woman might be rushing to see a sick relative. But what if it's just plain rudeness? Then I remind myself it's not about me, it's about them, and I can choose not to let their rudeness turn me into a worse person." On Friday, Bradley had completed his first week as a rideshare driver. He was physically tired but mentally transformed. "How did I do?" he asked Tyrone. "Better than expected. You learned quickly how to handle tough situations. And I learned one thing above all. You all deserve far more respect than you get. Thank you for recognizing that. Tyrone, I want to speed up our project. I can't stand seeing drivers working in poor conditions while I have resources sitting idle in the bank. Easy. There are still 3 weeks left in your trial." "I don't need 3 weeks. 1 was enough to understand everything I needed to." Tyrone smiled, seeing the sincerity in Bradley's eyes. "All right. Let's visit potential locations for our driving school on Monday." Over the weekend, Bradley visited Tyrone's project in the abandoned parking lot again. This time, he saw it with completely different eyes. He noticed the poor conditions, but also the dedication of the young people and the quality of the teaching. He saw the limited resources, but also Tyrone's creativity in overcoming obstacles. "Destiny," he said to the student he'd met the week before. "How was your week?" "Good, Mr. Bradley. Mister, I got a temporary job at a store, so now I can pay for my own bus fare to come to class." "And how's the learning going?" Instructor Tyrone said. "I can take the practical test next month. I'm really nervous but excited." "And after getting your license, what are your plans?" "I want to work as a driver, but I also want to help Instructor Tyrone teach other young people. He said I could become an assistant instructor." Bradley was moved by the girl's determination and gratitude. "Destiny, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, sir." "Your instructor Tyrone and I are planning to open a real driving school with proper facilities to help many more young people like you." The girl's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Really? That would be a dream. And you'd be one of the first assistant instructors if you want. I'd love that, Mr. Bradley. Aaliyah, who was listening, smiled at her classmate's enthusiasm. Destiny, you deserve this opportunity. You're one of the most dedicated students we've ever had. And you, Aaliyah? Bradley asked. What are your plans? I want to study education to help my dad develop even better teaching methods. And then, I want to expand the project to other cities. Other cities? Yes. Imagine if we could take Daddy's methodology across the whole United States. How many young people could benefit? Aaliyah's vision impressed Bradley. The 17-year-old was thinking about national social impact, while he, at 42, had spent his life focused only on personal profit. On Monday, Bradley and Tyrone visited 3 potential locations for the driving school. The first was too expensive, the second was poorly located, but the third caught their interest immediately. It was an old decommissioned gas station with a large lot for practical lessons, a small building that could house classrooms, and easy access to public transportation. What do you think? Bradley asked. It's perfect, Tyrone replied, eyeing the possibilities. We can set up a full course here with different types of maneuvers, and the building can be renovated easily. We can have classrooms, an office, proper restrooms, a break area. What would the total investment be? To buy, renovate, and fully equip it? About $500,000. Tyrone swallowed hard. It was more money than I'd make in 10 years driving for a rideshare app. That's a lot of money, Bradley. For me, it's an investment I consider safe, and I believe the social return will be infinitely greater than the financial one. But what if it doesn't work out? Then at least we tried to do something important, and we'll have learned a lot in the process. Tyrone walked across the lot, imagining what it would be like to have a proper space for his work. A paved yard, no potholes or safety hazards, classrooms with projectors for theory lessons, well-maintained cars for practical training. How many students could we serve here? Maybe 200 a month between free and paid classes. 200? Tyrone was impressed. That's over 10 times what I handle now. And we could hire other instructors, create jobs, expand the impact. Instructors like who? Your former students who excelled, experienced drivers who want to teach, retired professionals looking to contribute. With every detail discussed, the project took clearer shape. Bradley showed he'd thought through practical and bureaucratic aspects, while Tyrone brought his teaching expertise. There's something I want to propose, Tyrone said after touring the site. What? Let's start with a smaller pilot. Rent the space for 6 months, do basic renovations, test the model with 50 students. Why start smaller? Because if we find flaws in the model, it's easier to fix without heavy investment. And I want to be sure I can maintain teaching quality with more students. Bradley considered the proposal. It made business sense and showed Tyrone's responsibility. Agreed. 6-month trial, then we evaluate expansion. And during those 6 months, we keep working together on the road so you complete your training. Still think that's necessary? More than ever. If we're partners, I need to know you fully understand our business. All right. 2 mornings a week rideshare driving, 3 afternoons working at the driving school. Perfect. They sealed the deal with a handshake, but Bradley knew they'd need proper contracts. In the following weeks, as Bradley continued his rideshare experience and they planned the school, unexpected events sped things up. Barbara, excited about her son's initiative, mentioned the project to her senior ladies group. One of them, Deborah, was very interested. Barbara, could you introduce me to this instructor? Of course, Deborah. But why? My granddaughter is 18 and terrified to learn. A rude instructor traumatized her. She needs someone patient and understanding. Tyrone is perfect for that, very calm and respectful. When Deborah met Tyrone and heard about the community driving school, she was thrilled. Young man, can I make a proposal? Of course, Mom. I have a group of retired friends who'd love to support your project. Some were teachers, others businesswomen. All have experience and free time. Support how? Teaching theory, helping with admin, organizing fundraisers, promoting it on social media. Tyrone was surprised by the unexpected offer. That would be amazing, Deborah. But we can't pay. Who said anything about payment? We're all retired. looking for ways to feel useful again. Your project would be perfect. The conversation led to a meeting with 12 retired women, all eager to volunteer for the community driving school. Retired teachers volunteered to teach the theoretical classes. Former businesswomen offered to help with management and marketing, and all promised to spread the word about the project in their social circles. "Tyrone," Miss Deborah said at the end of the meeting, "you have no idea the power we mature women have when we organize for a cause." And she was right. Within 2 weeks, the volunteer group had created a website for the driving school, social media profiles, professional promotional materials, and a waiting list with over 100 people interested in lessons. "Bradley," Tyrone said, impressed by the momentum, "I think we need to speed up our plans." "Why?" "Because the demand is much higher than we expected, and we have a team of experienced volunteers eager to help." "That's great. It means the project has real potential. But it also means more responsibility. Disappointing 100 people on the waiting list. We won't let anyone down. We'll make it work." Bradley's determination rubbed off on Tyrone. They decided to open the driving school the following month, with an initial capacity for 100 students. The renovation of the old gas station was completed in record time. Bradley hired a trusted company and personally oversaw every detail, ensuring everything was suitable for drivers' education. Tyrone was moved when he saw the transformed space, a paved lot with a full practice course, a classroom with audio-visual equipment, a reception office, and a break area for instructors and students. "It's beautiful," said Aaliyah, touring the renovated space. "Daddy, can you believe you'll be working in a place like this?" "It still feels like a dream," Tyrone admitted. 2 months ago, I was teaching in an abandoned parking lot. Now I have a full professional setup." "And well-deserved," Bradley added. "You've always done professional work. You just didn't have the right structure." The grand opening of the community driving school was set for a Saturday. Bradley insisted it be a neighborhood celebration, open for everyone to learn about the project. Samantha, Bradley's ex-wife, showed up at the event. They hadn't seen each other in months. "Hi, Bradley. I came to see the project you mentioned." "Samantha, so glad you made it." "Tyrone, look who's here." The reunion between Samantha and Tyrone was emotional. She had followed from afar the struggles he faced after the accident that ended his career as a professional instructor. "Tyrone, I'm so happy for you. You finally get to do what you love professionally again." "Thank you, Samantha. And thank you for planting the seed of this whole story." "How so?" "If you hadn't mentioned my name so many times to Bradley during your marriage, maybe he wouldn't have made the connection when we met." Samantha smiled, remembering how often she had talked about the instructor, who inspired her to be more independent and courageous. "Honestly, Tyrone, you taught me so much more than just driving. You taught me to believe in myself." "And now, you'll teach hundreds of young people to believe in themselves," Bradley added. "That's the multiplying power of good teaching." During the opening celebration, touching stories emerged. Several of Tyrone's former students came to honor the event, sharing how his lessons had changed their lives. Deshaun, the young man who had gone from delivery driver to rideshare driver, brought his mother to meet the teacher who had been so important in her son's life. "Mr. Johnson," the woman said, emotional, "my son talks about you every day. He says you didn't just teach him to drive, you taught him to be a responsible man." Destiny arrived with 3 friends interested in learning to drive. "Teacher, these are the girls I told you about. They all want to sign up here." "And I told them you're the best instructor in the world," one of the friends added. The party filled the new space, with hundreds of people learning about the project, signing up for classes, and offering different kinds of support. Mrs. Barbara moved around proudly, introducing her transformed son to all her acquaintances. "Girls, you have no idea how much Ricardo has changed. He's become a completely different person." "Different how?" one of the friends asked. "More humble, more empathetic, more concerned about others' well-being. He's finally found a real purpose in life." The elderly volunteers worked tirelessly during the party, organizing sign-ups, explaining the project, and collecting information from interested people. Mrs. Deborah coordinated everything with impressive efficiency. "Tyrone," she said at the end of the event, We have 230 sign-ups for free classes and 87 for paid ones. 230? Tyrone was stunned. Can we handle that many people? We'll have to hire more instructors, Bradley replied, equally surprised by the demand, and maybe expand faster than we planned. Aaliyah, who had documented the entire party with photos and videos, approached excitedly. Dad, Bradley, did you see how many people are interested? And look how many former students came to support us. It was true. The party had become a celebration of the community Tyrone had built over the years, one young person at a time. When everyone had left and the place was empty, Tyrone, Bradley, and Aaliyah remained, looking around the space that would be the new center of their work. We did it, Tyrone said, still processing it all. Did what? Bradley asked. Turned a dream into reality. When I started teaching in that abandoned parking lot, I never imagined we'd have a place like this. And this is just the beginning, Bradley added. With this demand, we could expand to other parts of the city. Slow down, Tyrone laughed. Let's make sure this runs smoothly first. Then we'll think about expansion. Dad's right, Aaliyah agreed. Quality before quantity. But we can start planning for the future, Bradley insisted. Document our methods, prepare materials to replicate the model, train more instructors. Bradley's enthusiasm was contagious, but Tyrone kept his feet on the ground. Bradley, what amazes me most about you is how much you've changed in just a few weeks. How so? 2 months ago, you were a businessman focused only on personal profit. Now you're thinking about social impact and training people. And you were the one who made that change happen, Tyrone. You taught me that real success isn't measured in money. And you taught me that well-structured partnerships can multiply the impact of social work. Aaliyah watched the conversation between the two men, who had become not just partners, but true friends. Can I make a suggestion? She asked. Of course, sweetheart. What if we documented this whole story, from how you two met until now? It could inspire others to form similar partnerships. Great idea, Bradley agreed, and it could be useful when we expand the project. Not for marketing, Tyrone clarified, but to show that it's possible to bring people from different worlds together for a common cause. Exactly, to show that prejudice can be overcome when there's goodwill on both sides. The conversation went on late into the night, planning not just how the community driving school would operate, but dreaming about the impact it could have on young people across the city. 3 months later, the community driving school was running at full speed. Tyrone had hired 4 assistant instructors, all former students who had shown a talent for teaching. Bradley took over the administrative management, allowing Tyrone to focus entirely on the educational side. The free classes were funded by paid lessons and donations from a growing network of supporters. The model proved sustainable and replicable. Samantha visited the project regularly, contributing marketing and fundraising suggestions. Her initial presence caused some discomfort for Bradley, but gradually the two developed a respectful friendship. Samantha, Bradley said during one of her visits, thank you for forgiving me for my mistakes as a husband. Bradley, forgiveness was important for me too. Seeing you changed helped me heal old wounds. And it gave me hope that people can really change. Of course they can. Tyrone always believed that. That's why he dedicates his life to teaching young people. Barbara became the unofficial coordinator of the volunteers, organizing schedules, activities, and fundraising events. At 68, she found new purpose helping her son's project. Mom, Bradley said one day, you seem more excited now than when I was a kid. That's because I'm finally seeing my son do something truly important. It fills me with pride. Aaliyah turned 18 and decided to postpone college for a year to dedicate herself fully to the project. She created a traffic education program for public schools, taking her father's methodology beyond the driving school. Daddy, I managed to schedule workshops at 12 schools next month. 12 schools? Can you handle that? I won't be alone. I'll bring former students to help. It's their way of giving back what they learned here. Every month, new stories of triumph emerged from the driving school students. Young people who secured better jobs, gained independence, and became responsible, aware drivers. Then one day a special surprise happened. Samantha arrived at the driving school with a man Bradley didn't recognize. Bradley, Tyrone, I'd like you to meet my husband, Jonathan. Bradley felt a brief tightness in his chest but quickly composed himself. Nice to meet you, Jonathan. The pleasure's mine, Bradley. Samantha speaks highly of the work you're doing here. And I'd like to make a proposal, Jonathan continued. What proposal? Tyrone asked, curious. I'm the educational coordinator for the city school district. I'd like to formalize a partnership between you and the public schools in the area. The proposal was ambitious. The driving school would offer traffic education courses for high school students, funded by the city. That would be amazing, Aaliyah said excitedly. We could reach thousands of young people every year and raise an entire generation of more conscientious drivers, Tyrone added. What would our part be, Bradley asked, always mindful of practical details. Just keep doing the exceptional work you're already doing. The city would cover the costs and provide transportation for the students. The partnership was formalized 2 months later, marking the driving school's transition from a local project to a citywide initiative. During the signing ceremony with the city, the mayor made sure to meet Tyrone and Bradley personally. You're an example of how public-private partnerships can work, the mayor said. A businessman investing in social impact and a dedicated educator shaping responsible citizens. Actually, Mr. Mayor, Tyrone corrected, we both learned a lot from each other. Bradley taught me about management and sustainability, and I taught him about education and patience. And we discovered our differences were actually complementary, Bradley added. The signing ceremony was broadcast on local TV, giving the project nationwide visibility. In the following weeks, driving schools from other cities reached out, interested in replicating the model. Tyrone, Bradley said, showing a stack of emails. We've received inquiries from 15 different cities. And how will we handle so much demand? By creating a social franchising program. We'll train instructors from other cities in our methodology, provide teaching materials, and offer implementation support. Won't that dilute the quality of instruction? Not if we have a rigorous selection process and offer proper training. The idea evolved into the creation of the Tyrone Johnson Institute for Traffic Education, an organization dedicated to spreading the methodology developed at the pioneering driving school. Aaliyah took over as the Institute's coordinator, applying her communication and organizational skills to structure a nationwide instructor training program. Dad, within a year we could have our methodology applied in 50 US cities. 50 cities? Tyrone was impressed by his daughter's ambition. Why not? If it works here, it can work anywhere with committed instructors and the right structure. She's right, Bradley agreed, and the social franchising model ensures financial sustainability for everyone involved. A year after the driving school's opening, an anniversary celebration was held, marking all the achievements. Over 1,000 people attended, including current and former students, volunteers, government and business partners, and representatives from driving schools in other cities interested in the model. Destiny, now a certified assistant instructor, was one of the event's speakers. 2 years ago, I was a girl with no prospects, afraid to even cross the street. Today, I'm a driving instructor, helping other young people gain independence and confidence. Deshawn, who had become a coordinator for one of the school's branches, also shared his experience. Mr. Johnson taught me that driving is about responsibility, not just skill. Now I pass that on to my students. On the road, we represent our families and our community. During the event, Bradley gave an emotional reflection on his own transformation. A year and a half ago, I was a bitter man who judged people by appearances and mistreated those I considered beneath me. Today, I've learned that true success is making a positive difference in others' lives. Tyrone, more reserved, chose to highlight the collective effort. None of what we've achieved would have been possible without partnerships. Bradley brought resources and management, the volunteers brought experience and dedication, and the former students brought energy and motivation. Alone, I'd never have left that abandoned parking lot. Samantha, there with her husband Jonathan, was invited to speak about the project's impact on municipal education. In 1 year of partnership, we've seen a significant reduction in accidents involving young drivers trained by the school. Tyrone's methodology truly shapes more responsible drivers. Barbara, now coordinating a team of 20 active volunteers, closed the official remarks. This project taught me that age isn't a limit to contributing to society. We mature folks have experience and time that can be very useful when put to good purpose. The celebration lasted into the night, with music, food, and many conversations about the project's future. 6 months later, the Tyrone Johnson Institute for Traffic Education was operating in 32 U.S. cities, had trained over 2,000 responsible drivers, and had become a national benchmark for humane traffic education. Bradley, transformed by the experience, decided to sell his luxury dealerships and dedicate himself fully to social projects. He created an investment fund focused on businesses with positive social impact. Tyrone was invited to speak at national conferences on education and traffic, but he continued to teach practical classes regularly, maintaining direct contact with students. "Dad," Aaliyah once said, "you could just manage the institute and give lectures. Why do you still teach practical classes?" "Because it's in the practical classes that I learn from the students. If I lose that connection, I'll lose the essence of what I do." Aaliyah smiled, admiring her father's humility, how even with national recognition he kept his feet on the ground. The story of the community driving school reached international organizations interested in replicating the model in other countries. An American foundation invited Tyrone and Bradley to present the project at a global conference on education and urban mobility. "Tyrone, do you want to go to the United States to present our work?" "Only if you come with me. After all, we're partners in this story. And if Aaliyah comes too, she knows the project better than both of us." The international trip was a milestone in the lives of all three. They presented the American model to educators and public officials from various countries, inspiring adaptations of the methodology for different realities. "It's amazing," Aaliyah remarked during the conference, "to see how our local experience can have global relevance." "Human problems are universal," Tyrone replied. "Disrespect in traffic, lack of education, the need for opportunities for young people, they exist everywhere. And solutions based on partnerships and goodwill can work anywhere too," Bradley added. Back in the United States, the trio found dozens of invitations to expand the project, proposals for international partnerships, and even interest from documentary producers wanting to tell the story of the community driving school. "Tyrone," said the director of a production company, "your story is inspiring. It shows how people from different worlds can come together for a common cause. And how prejudices can be overcome when there's openness to truly know the other," Bradley added. "Most of all, it shows that real social change happens one person at a time," Aaliyah finished. "Not through grand gestures, but through daily, dedicated work." 2 years after the initial meeting between Bradley and Tyrone at the dealership, the two men found themselves in the same place again. But now, the situation was completely different. Bradley had sold the dealership to dedicate himself exclusively to social projects. The new owner, knowing the story of the businessman's transformation, invited Tyrone to give a talk on traffic education for the entire sales team. "It's surreal to be here again," Bradley commented, looking at the yellow Lamborghini still displayed in the lot. "Remember what you said that day?" Tyrone asked, smiling. "If you can drive this machine to the end of the street without shaking, I'll give you a new car," Bradley repeated, embarrassed. "What an idiot I was." "You weren't an idiot. You were just someone who hadn't yet learned to look beyond appearances. And you taught me that in the most elegant way possible. We taught each other, Bradley. You showed me it's possible to expand social impact without losing quality. I showed you that true success lies in making a difference in others' lives." Aaliyah, now 19 and studying education, had become one of the country's leading voices in traffic education for youth. She received invitations to speak at universities and advise on public policies. "Dad, Bradley," she said, arriving at the dealership after the talk, "I have a proposal for you." "What proposal?" the two asked simultaneously. "I want you to write a book telling this whole story, from the meeting here to today." "A book?" "Yes. Your story could inspire thousands of people to overcome prejudices and create unlikely partnerships for social good." But who would read a book like that? Tyrone asked, ever modest. Business leaders searching for purpose, educators looking for innovation, young people needing inspiration, mature individuals seeking ways to contribute to society. Aaliyah listed. The audience is huge. Bradley considered the idea. Truly, the transformation he had experienced could inspire other business leaders to rethink their priorities. And how would this book be structured? By telling the story chronologically, but weaving in reflections on leadership, education, partnerships, and social impact, Aaliyah suggested. Each chapter would end with practical suggestions for those who want to replicate aspects of what you've done. I like the idea, Tyrone agreed, but only if it focuses on the lessons learned, not self-promotion. Exactly, Bradley agreed. The goal would be to inspire and guide, not promote ourselves. Then let's do it, Aaliyah finalized. I'll organize the interviews, you both share the stories and reflections, and we'll find a professional writer to polish the text. The book, From Prejudice to Partnership. How Humiliation Became Social Transformation was published 2 years later, becoming a bestseller in the personal development and social responsibility category. The launch events filled auditoriums across the United States. Tyrone and Bradley shared the stage, recounting their perspectives on the same story and the lessons they had learned. The question we get asked the most, Bradley said during one event, is, how did you know the partnership would work? And the answer is we didn't, Tyrone added. We bet on each other's good faith and built trust through concrete actions. What kept us united were shared values we discovered over time, commitment to quality, respect for people, and a genuine desire to make a positive difference. During one talk, a woman in the audience asked a question that deeply struck them both. Do you think this transformation would have been possible if Tyrone were white or if Bradley were black? The question brought silence to the auditorium. Tyrone and Bradley exchanged glances before answering. The initial dynamic would probably have been different, Tyrone answered honestly. Racial prejudice influenced how I was treated in that first encounter, and that forced me to confront not just my arrogance, but also my racial biases, Bradley added. The transformation was deeper because I had to question multiple aspects of my worldview. But we believe people from any background can overcome prejudices and form meaningful partnerships, Tyrone continued. What matters is the willingness to truly know each other and recognize each other's worth, and to work together for goals bigger than our individual differences, Bradley concluded. 3 years after the book's release, the Tyrone Johnson Institute for Traffic Education was operating in every U.S. state and had been invited to implement pilot projects in Canada, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. Tyrone, now recognized as one of the leading authorities in humane traffic education in the Americas, still taught practical classes at least twice a week. Professor, a journalist asked during an interview, why do you still teach when you could just manage the institute? Because it's in direct interaction with students that I keep learning. Every young person teaches me something new about teaching. If I stop giving lessons, I'll stop growing as an educator. Bradley, meanwhile, had become an angel investor, specializing in social enterprises, helping other entrepreneurs build businesses with positive impact. What do you look for in a project before investing? Asked a business magazine. 3 things: a real problem being solved, a sustainable solution, and most importantly, people committed to solid values. I learned that technology and money don't make a difference if the people behind them lack character. Aaliyah completed her degree in education with a thesis on humanized teaching methods for youth in socially vulnerable situations. She was invited to pursue a master's at Harvard, but chose to keep working in the United States. Why turn down Harvard? Friends asked. Because my country needs me more right now. I can study abroad later, but the window of opportunity to expand our social impact here is now. On a Saturday afternoon, 5 years after that first humiliating encounter at the dealership, Tyrone and Bradley found themselves back in the abandoned parking lot where it all began. The place was still run down, but now bore a sign. Here stood the first hub of the community driving school. Today, the Tyrone Johnson Institute for Traffic Education serves youth across the United States. Can you believe what's happened? Bradley asked, looking at the modest spot that had sparked a nationwide project. "Sometimes it still feels like a dream," Tyrone replied. "But then I remember every young person we've helped, and I know it's real." "How many in total?" "Between graduates from the original driving school and the Institute's branches, over 15,000 youth. 15,000 lives changed for the better," Bradley murmured, amazed by the number. "And each of them can touch other lives. The ripple effect never ends." The two men stood in silence for a few minutes, reflecting on the extraordinary journey they'd shared. "Tyrone, can I confess something?" "Of course." "That first day, when I humiliated you in public, part of me knew I was being unfair, but my pride and arrogance were louder than my conscience. And what changed? You treated me with dignity, even after the humiliation. That forced me to see my own lack of character. We all make mistakes, Bradley. What defines us isn't the mistakes, but how we respond to them." "And did you always believe I could change?" Tyrone smiled before answering. "I believed in your mother. Barbara raised you with strong values. They were just buried under layers of hurt and arrogance. And now? Now you're one of the most principled people I know. The transformation was real and lasting. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself." Alia arrived at the parking lot, interrupting the men's nostalgic moment. "Dad, Bradley, there you are. I have amazing news." "What news?" they asked together. "The project was chosen by the UN as one of the 10 most innovative education initiatives in the world. You'll present our methodology at an international conference in Geneva." Tyrone and Bradley exchanged glances, hardly able to believe it. "The UN?" Tyrone asked, still processing. "Yes, and they want you both to help draft global guidelines for humanized traffic education." Bradley felt tears in his eyes. From an arrogant businessman who humiliated people for fun to a global reference in social education. The transformation had seemed impossible, yet it happened. "Dad," Alia continued, "want to know the best part?" "What?" "In the UN's invitation letter, they specifically mentioned that our methodology stands out for demonstrating how unlikely partnerships can create extraordinary social impact." "Unlikely partnerships," Bradley repeated, smiling. "That's a good way to describe us. Unlikely at first," Tyrone corrected, "but inevitable once we truly knew each other." The end. Tell us in the comments what you thought of this incredible journey of transformation. Do you believe people can truly change when they find the right purpose? Share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.